Ah, yes, the Colts O-Line. Doesn't this topic bring back happy memories? Today we begin reviewing the Colts 2023 roster position group by position group. Each week we're going to dive into a different position group and sort of analyze their strengths and weaknesses, what we learned from 2023, and what we can carry on into 2024. First up, of course, is the offensive line. We're going to look into the starters before going over the depth that we have on this team on the offensive line, and then looking at the unit as a whole and maybe whether or not we need to make any changes in 2024, but we'll start with the starters. The Colts starting left tackle is, of course, Bernhard Raimann, our 2022 third-round pick. This was his second year in the league. Raimann is ranked 7th in the league at offensive tackle, according to PFF, with a grade of 82.3. He's, of course, on the younger side, but Raimann has emerged as a dependable starter for this team, able to go head-to-head with some of the best edge rushers in the league. I feel great about Raimann and his longevity for this team as we head into 2024 and beyond. At right tackle, of course, the Colts still have 2018 second-round pick Braden Smith, the number 5 ranked tackle according to PFF in his 6th year in the league with a grade of 83.3. Smith works alongside Raimann to truly lock down opposing edge rushers. This tandem is likely the highlight of the offensive line for the Colts, and I have no notes. Obviously, there are better guys out there, but I feel great about keeping this tandem intact in the years to come. Moving to the interior now, Quenton Nelson is our leading left guard. In year 6, he was selected for yet another Pro Bowl as the 15th best offensive guard in the league with a rating of 70.8 according to PFF. Now, obviously, Quenton Nelson is someone we want on our roster for as long as possible. He's going to the Pro Bowl again for the 6th year in a row. He's a leader. He's been on this team through every high and low, and he's been a major factor, making significant blocks time after time. Quenton Nelson is a great player that we want on this team. Nelson had one of his worst seasons in 2022. He had allowed 4 total sacks in all of his first 4 years in the league, and then allowed 5 in 2022 alone. He bounced back this past season, of course, in 2023, but we haven't totally seen him return to the form that he was at earlier on in his career. Nonetheless, Nelson is still one of the very best in the league, and we're lucky to have him. On the other side of the center at right guard, we have Will Fries leading the way for the Colts. This man was drafted in the 7th round in 2021. This is his 3rd year in the league. He finished the season as the 33rd best guard with a rating of 61.2, according to Pro Football Focus. And here's where some of the problems arise. Fries, of course, was drafted in the 7th round, and at times I'm curious about whether or not there could be better options elsewhere. Will Fries is one of those examples of a guy who just happens to be the best at his position in the particular building he's in. I'm not hating on the guy. I hope he has a great day. But right guard is likely the weakest spot on the line. And finally, the anchor of the offense, Ryan Kelly, the 2016 first-round pick, is the league's 8th best center with a rating of 77.2, according to Pro Football Focus, after his 8th year in the league. Ryan Kelly is a phenomenal anchor to the offense. Obviously, we love Ryan Kelly, but it's important to note that he is in his 8th year in the league. Now, the average lifespan of offensive line careers in the NFL is just over 3 years. Granted, very few of them are as successful as Ryan Kelly, but the point still stands. His success has gradually declined as he ages, and that has been very clear in recent years. So those are our starters, the starting 5, I suppose you could say, for this Colts offensive line. But now let's get into the depth that this team has, because this team's success was directly hampered by injury issues throughout the year. The offensive line is one that suffered from multiple injuries in its own right. Bernhard Raimann missed weeks 4 and 5, while Ryan Kelly missed weeks 3, 4, and 12. In that time, Wesley French filled in at center, while Blake Freeland filled in for Raimann on the edge. And without a doubt, we missed the presence of our starters throughout the season when they were out with injury. Freeland received a grade of 44.2 by Pro Football Focus after this season, and Wesley French performed only slightly better. The Colts allowed 41 total sacks this season. That's about 2.4 per game. Now, in games where the offensive line was not fully healthy, where we were missing at least one starting offensive lineman, the Colts allowed an average of 2.5 sacks per game. We actually let up the 14th least amount of sacks in the league, which I suppose is middle of the pack. But that specific stat line didn't necessarily see much of a dip in production when the starters were out. We also didn't see a dramatic decrease in rushing yards when backup linemen were in the game. Every team deals with injuries, and it seems like the Colts have the depth to stay afloat. So the question then becomes, how did this unit perform as a whole? Generally, I was very happy with the run blocking presence from this offensive line. Jonathan Taylor and the rest of the running backs had tons of space to work with, and even when Jonathan Taylor was out earlier in the season, before he had even hit the field, the running game was by no means a liability, in part thanks to this offensive line's elite run blocking. The Colts actually finished this season with 4.3 yards per carry, which lands in the top 10 in the league after 2023. But on the other side of this coin is pass protection. This is where I hope to see some improvement. Although Gardner Minshew was not brought to the ground an overwhelming amount of times, he still faced pressure consistently throughout the season. Now, with that said, I understand the fact that Gardner Minshew is not some top 5 QB or anything. He's a really high quality backup that can be a competent starter, and that definitely shows throughout these games with his ability to evade pressure, because you can't ask the offensive line, any offensive line, to be perfect on every single play throughout the season. But I do think that Gardner Minshew was pressured a little bit more than he needed to be. And for most of this season, Gardner Minshew simply was our starting quarterback. That's the fact of the matter. And since mobility, evading pressure, and scrambling aren't exactly staples of Gardner Minshew's game, pass protection becomes a much more integral part of the offense. I felt that the pass protection for the Colts was really the root of our offensive struggles for the majority of the season. Consistently, Gardner Minshew was under fire from opposing edge rushers. Sometimes he would sprint out of the pocket and look for a play elsewhere. Other times he would force a throw that would often end up incomplete, but sometimes intercepted. This problem persisted week after week and really stunted the efficiency of this offense, especially in plus territory. Offensive drives simply ran out of gas, primarily because of the unreliability of passing downs. Obviously, the offensive line isn't the only component of this issue. It's on Gardner Minshew, it's on the receivers, but the starting 5 in the trenches play a very significant role. So really, the most relevant question we have to ask ourselves is whether or not making moves in the offseason to change who is on this offensive line in 2024 is necessary. I mentioned before how right guard seems to be the weakest spot on the line, but there doesn't seem to be very much offensive guard value in the draft this year, especially for a team picking at number 15. And with the 15th pick in the draft, it doesn't make a lot of sense for the Colts to grab a guard at that spot in the first round, especially when we have other needs, like at corner and maybe receiver if we can't re-sign Pittman, etc. Offensive tackle has a whole lot more first-round value, and it's not unthinkable to suggest that someone like J.C. Latham or Talise Fuaga could end up on the Colts next season, but to me, the corner and receiver issues are much more prevalent. So the only real goal this April is going to be maybe grabbing some depth in the later rounds for this offensive line. I still worry about the future of this O-line considering its overall age, and I would like some upgrades, especially in the future as these players get older and closer to retirement, namely Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, maybe Quentin Nelson. But I'm just not sure if this is the draft to do it. I don't think there's the value in the first round for a guard, and there's not quite the value for a tackle, especially in the first round because, like I said, Bernard Raymond and Braden Smith are both incredible. We all know that, so it's not quite time yet to grab a tackle in the first round when we have other needs on this team, because I think that we're poised to potentially make a playoff run, a deep playoff run next year, maybe a shot at a Super Bowl. It's not time to plan for the future when we don't necessarily know for sure that Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson, any of them are going to retire soon. All right, so overall, how do we grade this group? I'm going to give the Colts O-line a solid 7.75 out of 10. It's not elite, and it has its issues. It's certainly worrisome at times, but it also definitely isn't bad. And honestly, as a Colts fan, I'll take that. Thank you for watching through to the end of the video. Feel free to hit like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Next week, we're going to be going over the quarterback room. That's Anthony Richardson, Gardner Minshew, and Sam Ehlinger. Yep, remember him. Have a great week from the Colts Perspective.